Hey, thank you for listening to this new episode of the Business of Fun podcast. My guest today is Micaela Piccolo. This is hands down one of the most fun conversations I've had in quite a while. And I'll talk to you about it in just a second. Before I do, let me remind you to visit my website. That's davewakeman.com. davewakeman.com. That's my home for everything. Or if you're listening to this, you can get the Talking Tickets newsletter at talkingtickets.substack.com. You can get the newsletter too by hitting the little, putting your email in the drop-down box on the Dave Wakeman website. If you like this conversation, you're going to like everything that's going on the website and in the newsletter. So, and this one's a great one. Plus, there is a Talking Tickets Slack channel, and I'm going to put the link to that in the show notes. Somewhere, maybe by this time, 400 people in there talking tickets from all over the world. It's a great place. It's free, so make sure you come and join us. Micaela Piccolo. She was great. We talked about Dano's Dangerous Tequila and her Pony Social Agency. So two separate things, but great conversation. We started off talking about her background, which was really interesting. Much like myself, she spent some time working as a bartender. She also worked in New York City, which I had a period of time where I worked as a bartender in New York City when I very first moved there, and I was figuring out what in the world I was doing living there. She spent some time in China and Asia, helped build, serving, working around liquor and beverages and service. So it was great. We talked about the work with Dano's Dangerous Tequila, about building brand awareness. We talked about market research. We talked about the Pony Social, some of the social media work she does, especially we learned a lot about TikTok. We learned about trends versus strategy. We talked about understanding how to manage legacy brands. We talked about understanding positioning, disruption in a category, picking an enemy. One of the cool things is she used a couple of examples, Tiger Balm and Hendrick's Gin. Totally right up my alley. We talked about loyalty. We talked about how to, get the maximum amount of small budgets. I mean, this is like I'm pretty sure that the next time I teach a brand management class, I'm going to assign this as homework because this was such a incredible podcast conversation. So here's my conversation with Micaela Piccolo on the Business of Fun. All right, I want to welcome Micaela Piccolo to the Business of Fun. What's up?
Hello, I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
Oh, of course. You really sold yourself very well because you were like, I did all this research on the podcast, so I know. And I was like, this is amazing. So I was like going, nobody does research when they're coming on this. This is great. It's so good to talk to you. It's so nice to meet you. You have come to me because you are working on a brand called Dano's Dangerous Tequila, and we were talking about our experiences in hospitality, in the service industry. Both of us have lived and worked as bartenders in Miami and New York. So this is great. So tell me, and the people who are listening, I already know, but tell them a little bit about you so we can create a little foundation for everybody for this conversation.
All right, I'm excited. Thank you. A little bit about me. I started off my career as a bartender. I bartended in New York City for quite some time. And then I was very fortunate to spend a little bit of time in Miami as well, bartending at a beautiful bar called Sweet Liberty. In New York, I did it at Saxon and Pearl when that was still open, and Distilled when that was still open. So been around a couple of fun nights at Gold Bar, which I think is still open. And then I was very fortunate enough to get a role with a company called Maison Ferrand, who does some of the most beautiful spirits I've ever known. Alexander Gabriel is a very talented owner and distiller and blender. I worked for Plantaray when it was Plantation and Citadel Gin, Ferrand Cognacs, and I was able to represent them in all of Asia Pacific. So I was based out of Shanghai and represented the entire category and spent a beautiful amount of time training bartenders from all around the world, learning from all of the different markets. And then after that, I worked for a company called Nimbility, and that company's goal was to help brands get into the market in China and other places in Asia. So it was seeing it from another perspective, working with brands and bartenders. And from there, COVID happened, and I was ready to come back home to. I was in China during COVID, which is a wild. That could be its own podcast, of course. But then I moved back, and at the time, I wasn't quite sure what angle I wanted to get into, whether it be on the brand side, going back to working in bars and restaurants. But somebody asked me about TikTok, which was Douyin in China at the time, and I had some experience working and understanding, what was working well on Douyin there, and started to apply the same things over to some of the questions I got here. And then I sort of built an agency, or you build the plane on the way down. I built an agency by accident. It became first consulting. And then I was like, oh, I guess people want to work with me and to do all of this digital marketing. And so I look at Pony Social as this like 2.0 version of what I started. So that's my main company. And we do digital marketing, but a lot of brand building, a lot of community building. We talk about events, we talk about campaigns. But my biggest client, and one of the ones we're going to be talking about today, is I'm a fractional CMO with, actually. It's called Dano's Dangerous Tequila. And I've been with them for almost, I think, 4 years now. Man, time flies when you drink tequila. And what they're doing in the space has been so fun. Like I don't think I'll ever walk away from them. I think they're up to something really cool. So yeah, that's where I am today.
Yeah, well, let's start then, because one of the things that you talked about when you were introducing yourself, and then one of the things that is in my notes was just the idea of overall growing awareness, and I think like a useful way to look at it is obviously through the eyes of Dano's, but then also through just how can we apply some of those lessons to people who are wondering how they can grow awareness, because I don't think it's going to come as a surprise to you, and definitely not a surprise to me, but it's hard to get people's attention these days. And so, how do you approach that, and how have you approached it with Dano's?
Absolutely. That's a great question. I would say that first things first is that when you're building a brand, it's very important to be really clear about who this brand is for. Who are the people you're speaking to, the primary, the secondary audiences. A lot of my recent conversations with even other brands are that there is a disjointedness in people wanting the brand to be for everyone or to solve everyone's problem. And really, it really dilutes your messaging, and it doesn't create a safe space for a group of people to come in and spend time on, a brand that they love. So I think I always say to everyone, before you even think about what your brand awareness play is, you have to make sure that gets established first. And that's a struggle for a lot of brands. Key stakeholders and investors might believe that that's something different because of what their friends tell them versus what the market research might tell. So these are all, and then what the bartenders or the people on the ground, the salesperson in retail, what their experience is. So it's really important you gather all of the data, you really spend time getting to know that audience and making sure that you have some internal stakeholders who understand them so well. Then the next question is, okay, where do they spend their time? Are they spending their time on Instagram? Are they spending it on Google? Are they watching live streams? Are they YouTubers? And all of that's super important, because you can hire an agency to give you a marketing plan, but if they don't know where your audience lives or where they spend their time, you're almost screaming into the void, which is not useful, and especially not for dollars, right? And I would say that a fun little fact that I recently looked up is, how many times do you have to be exposed to a brand name till you decide to make a purchase? And I think it's over 25 times right now. I think it's almost up to 29 or something like that. But I know it's over 25, and it used to be 7 to 8. So brand awareness is super important, and you need to be creating content and putting things out there. But I would say like the most important is where, being really specific about owning a channel or two, and then expanding on that as you grow and money grows too, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. That's who's it for? What's it for? Is like, that's how I teach people when I teach my brand management classes or any kind of consulting gig. It's like, you got to know. And there's this there's two pieces of advice, and I'll be curious what you think, that I give people, which is number one, you can't be everything to everyone, right? And that's what you just said. And then the other thing that I tell people about, and they push back on it, and I don't know why, because I'm obviously right, is you have to pick an enemy, because picking an enemy is like the number one, like, greatest brand tool you have. And it doesn't have to be explicit, like you're like, I'm taking this person down. It's just like you have to be, give it edge from which, like, people can hang on to you. And that,
Yes.
that's like, you have to be opposed to something.
This is, it goes back to what do you stand for? And it doesn't have to be, there's so many places that you can stand for something. It can, what are you putting inside of the product? What material do you use? What political affiliation do you
Yeah.
have? Like, there's so many ways to say we are this, but we are really not that. And the more that you can say we are
Yeah.
really not that, the more people are like, okay, these are my people. This is where I want to spend my time. This is where I want to spend my money. And it becomes a no-brainer. And you know that.
Well, the other thing that I find interesting about this too is by, like, telling people no and saying, like, oh, this is not for you, it draws those people in even much more. It's like a catnip for them, right? They come for it, and then there's, of course, it does eliminate all these people who are definitely never going to be involved for you. But it's like the old, remember the Apple and PC commercials when, like, and Apple was like cool and hip, and then, like, Microsoft was a little bit staid and old, and those things were like, everybody, it was like the people who were going to be, like, definitely, like, staid and old, they were going to stick with their Microsoft. But anybody who even wanted to see themselves as hip and young were attracted to Apple. It's the same thing with all of us, unless I'm missing something, which, it's worked enough times that I think I got it.
No, I think I think obviously that's so important. And how I'm seeing it manifest now is really interesting because there are brands that don't have a long lifeline or lifespan, excuse me. And a lot of that's because they keep hopping on trends. And I always say people, the trends and brand strategy are kind of not the same. The trends can be leveraged, but it has to go back to that original idea. And I see there are some brands that just consistently hop on trends. But then at the end of the day, if that trend disappears or that group, there's no one really loyal there to defend the brand, to love the brand, to be in the comment section, to advocate for it. And so I always say to a brand, like, if this trend disappeared, if all this went away, like, who's really here? And not just because you want to hop on something because it might make you go viral for a moment, spike a sale, but then it goes away. That's not building a legacy brand, which is what Nike and these great brands have done for so many years.
Well, let me ask you, you said legacy brand, and I was thinking about the study by the IPA in England with the long and the short of it, right? Which is like, you have to invest a certain amount of money in your long-term brand building. And because, what you're talking about with the trends, right? It's like, last click attribution, which is something we've been talking about on the podcast a lot lately. It's sugar highs. Right, like you spike it, but then your business is erratic, it's unstable, and it's unsustainable. And you spoke about the kind of like convincing people that that's the situation. How do you have that conversation with people to help them understand the importance of brand building, and building something that's not just based on trends? Because obviously everybody, I don't even know what the trend is right this second, because maybe it's still TikTok. I don't know, or it's like I know it's Dubai chocolate everywhere I go when I'm out in the world. So,
that's another,
but whatever the trend is, and like, how do you go? Like, listen, you have to be. The trend is a tool. It's not a strategy. So, and how do you tell people that?
So a lot of the times, I will share a deck of some of the greatest campaigns we've ever seen. Coca-Cola had always did great, iterations of that. And I think my favorite thing that I do now is I actually did this recently with a client. I took them out in the city. I was in New York and I walked around and I just pointed to all of the things, whether it was a purse that someone's holding or something that was on the back bar and like explained the difference between a legacy and just something that's going viral right now. And how that legacy brand meant something about them. Why are they ordering that bottle of this versus this bottle of that? What does it mean about them? How does it look? How are they being perceived? we don't subconsciously as buyers do that. We don't think we're doing it. We're like, no, I like this
Mhm.
product. No, there's a million reasons back there in the
Yeah.
brain that are working to put all of the reason why you're going to say, yes, I want to spend my money on this. And so I feel like bringing someone into real life, away from a screen, away from it all, just to say, what do people wear? What are they carrying? What's on the table when they order their steaks and their, macaroni and cheese? Like what are they drinking when they do that? And so
Uh-huh.
where do these products fall into those moments? And so I think a mix of that and ritual is figuring out the places where a product falls into a time and place that, like, it's, if you're going to go start a new job, you think about immediately, I want probably a new computer if my company's not supplying it.
Mhm.
So what does that
Yeah.
computer mean about me? Which goes back to the, Mac, Dell type of conversation. What do I want to exude when I go into this space? What do I need this for? So yes, it's all about functionality, but still, I think people make a decision ultimately about, like, what does this mean about me, and that's not a bad thing to have. What is your perception, what do these things mean about you? So I think getting a brand to understand that takes out a lot of the other questions about, it's not what are they other brands doing, it's what are we do in this space, and what times and spaces do we own, and that people will go, oh, obviously that's the product I want for this. It's a no-brainer. That makes sense.
Yeah. There was a story that I heard from a guy called Tom Goodwin, and Tom is like, he was in one of the big ad agencies for a long time, but he was talking about why when he moved to Miami and from New York, he wanted a BMW, and he was talking about, like, he grew up in England, like, and so, he remembers, like, he drew it back to, like, when he was 3 or 4 years old and started seeing those ads, and, like, he's like, didn't grow up really wealthy, and so he didn't, it wasn't one of those things where he's like, I just owed a BMW because I'm a white dude. It was more like a thing he had grown up in it, and all of these things, like we talk about ritual and legacy, it's like you don't know, right? It goes back to that 25 to 29 times. Like, you don't know when somebody first really recognizes you, and they could see and hear you those first 25 times and never quite connect what it is. And then that 26th time, all of a sudden, your brand is the most important one to them in this moment. It's like when you're celebrating. I read an article recently, which we'll bring it back to the booze again, about the way people pick champagne for their celebrations, and it's like, and this is the thing where it's like, you build a better mousetrap, which is complete nonsense. How people buy champagne. And it's like, I was like, I know booze because I did nightclubs, did bars, did restaurants,
Mhm.
did all these things. But most people, if you get them a bottle of Moet or a bottle of Vouv, you've hit it out of the park. And this is the thing:
Mhm.
you have to, like, as the person who's marketing the product, you have to be willing to step back and go, I'm not the customer. I'm too
Yeah.
close to this. Which I'm sure is like what happens when you're showing people the legacy. Is like, when they expect that it's going to happen instantly, and you're like going, no, that the Birkin bag is like 150 years of consistency, right? Those things don't happen like, really so simply, which is a long way for me to get back to this idea. One of the things you had mentioned earlier, before we started recording, was the idea of having to build up this brand around, I think it was like true agave. Is that how you put it? But around, like, teaching people about what agave is in regards to tequila. And I think that's it's an important thing to talk about because, again, I think people make assumptions. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Absolutely. So this is such a fun topic, and where do I begin? So Danos Dangerous Tequila is a brand that is made at a hacienda that's over 180 years old. They've been around. This liquid and the methodology has been around for a long time, but our approach to making tequila is completely different, and it's because of how we approach flavor. And the reason I want to address that is because it's 100% agave. There are no additives that we add to it, but the conception about flavored products, flavored spirits, let alone flavored tequila, has such a negative aura around it, because everyone thinks that you're just throwing gunk in there, and you're pushing, whatever you can, marketing made up flavors to just push that
Mhm.
out and increase sales. And it's really not why this product was developed, which is why I was very sold in the very beginning about working with the brand. I will say that building a category or disrupting a category when it's been established. I mean, right now, if you look at the shelves in retail of tequila, you'll see that all of the bottles look very elegant and historical, and full of tradition, and just like something that you'd want to share with friends, that feels legacy when you look at them.
Mhm.
And we decided to put the word dangerous on our label, which is it's crazy because our liquid can compete with some of the best tequilas out there in terms of our Blanco, Reposado, and Añejo. But the flavors, you use the Blanco and the Reposado as the base. They were just approaching it a little bit more fun. And we want people to look at tequila and be like, take it seriously, but also have a really good time. And that's kind of what the name Dano, the gentleman behind the product, wanted when he started it. So I'll go into more about the product, but that's kind of the trouble now, or this, not the struggle. It's a gift for me as a marketer, because I feel like we're giving this blue ocean, which an opportunity. If you've ever read that book, Blue Ocean Strategy, it's one of my favorites. I highly recommend. But we've have this blue ocean. There's a whole category of flavored tequila that's just got this idea that it's bad and not well made, and not made with craft, and not thoughtfully produced. And we are completely proving that that's not true, and that you can also have a good time while you drink it.
Yeah, the use of the term dangerous, and along with your explanation, kind of highlights that thing we were talking about earlier about picking an enemy. And then you showed all these examples because I we were talking before about the experience I had with Yellowtail, which is, and when you talked about market research, which I want to come back to in a minute, is still the most beautiful piece of market research I've ever seen, because it was, I still see it, right? Like really remember it. It was like, there's a group of people who want to drink. They don't like hard liquor, and they don't like beer. And so, but the wine is seems too stuffy. I think was the way it put it. And so there was this huge bump, like hole right in the middle, which, like, to your idea of a blue ocean, it was a huge blue ocean. And this is the same thing to me. It sounds like with the tequila is like a lot of stuff is, either there seems to be two sides. There's really fancy stuff, which I have a bottle or two upstairs on my bar of really fancy stuff, or it's rot gut, like Jose Cuervo or below. Right. And there's some
Made with a lot of funny stuff.
yeah, amazing Jose Cuervos. But the regular stuff that people think of, that's not it. And so it's cool for like the way you described it, because that seems to point right back to the idea of picking the enemy. Or am I wrong?
No, absolutely. Actually, when the product launched initially, this was prior to me being with the brand. The label, and I will show it to you at some point. It said Danos Dangerous Tequila, but Danos was the big. That was large letters, so it was Danos. That's how people knew it. When we actually worked with QCM, which they did this beautiful agency out of Philadelphia. They did the rebrand or developed the brand for Hendrix. They did all the ideation, the strategy, and they did Sailor Jerry. So it was very, very intentional to work with an agency that was ready to do a disrupting product. Because when Hendrix came out, and I don't know if you remember this working in nightclubs or when that landed on your shelf, but bartenders hated that product because it was so annoying and clunky, and the speed pourers never fit on it. You never knew if it was empty inside. There's just so many issues. But there was gin for the curious, and they coined this phrase, and they developed that. So we knew, okay, we have an opportunity here to either own Dangerous or get rid of it completely. And we all collectively agreed that doubling down on Dangerous was a really bold move, but also doing what we're doing, because we do fresh fruit infused flavors. Like, we do not use any artificial ingredients. That's also bold. So we were like, why wouldn't we own the word dangerous in a category that's afraid to speak about tequila that way, and it was just a no-brainer. We had a blast putting together the new labels, which you'll see them when we get you some product. But if you look on our website, like that's the new brand, and it's Dangerous is bigger than Dano's. And it's, Dano's a real guy, but Dangerous is how we live. And that's kind of, what it is. Not dangerous. Don't get too drunk, and don't, we're not
Don't drink and
encouraging
drive. No,
misbehavior, but we're encouraging living a little boldly.
Yeah, and I think that to me is curious because, or the idea of highlighting dangers, to me is something I think everybody can learn a little bit from, because I think that what happens, and I know this happens in alcohol and spirits, because I've been in that, is that you get comfortable trying to copycat people and trying to be just like X, but just a little bit like different, and so how hard was it, because you talked about research, you talked about enemy, you talked about some of the attributes that you had, but how hard was it to really like get people to buy into this? Because unfortunately, a lot of times, like just kind of like following the lead and following the herd is the easy decision for people to make.
It's still extremely difficult, but I will say it's so rewarding when you can prove that people are like, oh, I get it. Oh, I see it. Oh, that's for us. And so it is to carve a new space, to forge a new path is always going to be 10 times harder than doing, what another brand might be doing and just doing a small iteration of that. But if you can build a team around you that is willing to go there and willing to think outside the box and willing to do a lot with little budget, or really get out there, it's so rewarding then when you realize that there's a group of people out there, they're like, finally somebody made something for me. Finally somebody made a product that I actually would want to drink and order and enjoy. And no, I don't want to infuse pineapple jalapeno tequila at home. I just want to throw it over ice and just give it to my friends and let them enjoy it. And that's what Dano did. He made this recipe at home, and people came over and they were like, they loved it. He would do it for parties, and they were like, man, this stuff is so good. It's dangerous. That's kind of where it was too smooth. It went down too smooth. And so we took that out of, we went down to the hacienda and figured something out, but I'll talk about that partnership later. But the whole idea was to just say, like, what is something that people are already doing, and how can we make it better? How can we make it easier for you to be a better host? How can we make it easier for you to have the better party? The one that people call you about the next day, I'm like, that was great, and that's what we want them to feel. And so when we see people recognize it, it's 10 times more rewarding, I think, than just doing something safer.
Yeah. Well, you brought up the idea of of the budget, and so I'm curious about this, because I think that in too many instances people think that you have to have this incredibly large budget to make an impact, and I've done it both ways. And obviously having more money is always better, because it allows you to do, know that you can spend the money to do the thing. At the same time, having a large budget is also a little bit dangerous because it makes you lazy, and I'll say that from my own experience. So when you're talking about having a small budget and creating a big impact, what does that look like, and how has that played out for you guys?
Oh, that's a great question. I think the benefits of having a smaller budget is it really requires you to be creative, to think about, if we're going to spend this, what are we getting out of this? I have seen, and I won't name drop, some other agave brands just have so much money and so much, conversation around them, but they are falling short when it comes to sales, and they are falling short with brand longevity. And I'll say it's slower. You have a slower growth, but I do think it's more permanent. Like you will take over a little bit of territory, and then that territory really loves you and believes in you because you spent whatever you could there, and then you're growing slowly and slowly, wider and wider. Then that becomes bigger. What I will say about not having a lot of money also is that you would be really surprised at how many things you can. We love to pay content creators. We don't like to try to do anything. We know what we're limited in, and we can't. But you do go to people honestly. You're like, look, here's what I got. what can we do? But we want to talk to your people, and we think that our audiences are the same. And how can we do things together? And we like to spend a lot of money with people who are, in our audience, but understand our audience. So we work with a lot of wedding planners, surprisingly, and even our tequila is named Dangerous. So that wouldn't make a lot of sense for people, but these are the people that love to host, love to throw a good party, and love to give their guests something delicious. So they know when they have our coffee reposado, they're halfway through to the best martini, espresso martini ever for their wedding, and that's a no-brainer for their guests. And so everyone's so bought in. And those are the people that we think about, and they're most of the time they're open to some type of collaboration. We've worked with some really expensive, partners, and made some mistakes along the way, but they were all learning. I think a good brand will learn from everything, even the good stuff that happens. And I think that Danos has done a really good job at saying, okay, every decision here was good because we did this, and what are we going to do now so we don't lose anyone, or we don't, or the budget this year is spent just so much more wisely. I think, let me know if that answers your question. I know
No,
the
it
budget
does.
it's such a large conversation.
Listen, I don't make it easy on you. Is the but there's a couple of things that I'm curious about. The one thing that I think sticks with me right away is, so you said, like, learning from everything, and I agree. And then the second, like, deeper point to this, which is what I'm going to ask about, is, I always am like, make sure when you're going into an influencer campaign or start launching a product or whatever action you're taking, is like, you make a guess. You make a bet to figure out what it's going to look like, so that when you go back and reflect on this, which any good strategist or brand manager should be doing, you're not just pulling it out of thin air so that you have, like, recency bias. Is that your approach, or and if it is, or if it isn't, why, and then how does it play out for you?
I would say 90% yes. And then the other 10% is just, I have no idea. Let's try it and let's see what happens. Because if I were to say that I was an expert in all of things, there are days that the algorithms of social media prove me completely wrong or right. There are days that influencers that I think that are going to be the perfect partner. We did a campaign. It was a one-off video, and everybody was so excited about it, with a really big brand. We did a video with Liquid Death, and that was something that I basically hounded them for a year. And I said, this makes so much sense. There's this amazing crossover, similar audiences. Obviously these are hydration focused, water, non-alcoholic space, but we just thought, like, the lifestyle would be very interesting. And we did this video, and then nothing. And I was like, damn it. But the idea that we could get out there, and being the small brand that we are, for the cost that we were able to do it, and the collaboration, there was so much learning in just that we went, okay, so in the future, we've never had done a brand, a collab with another brand yet, other than a cocktail ingredient, maybe. But this was just such a learn, and I have no shame that it, in the eyes of someone, it got thousands and thousands of eyeballs or whatever, but really there was no sales click. There was nothing that happened in market for the sales team to maybe put the products together. There was nothing that just pushed people over the edge. And I was like, okay, so, but was it a fail? I don't think so, because I think it was such a great opportunity. We obviously got a lot more people who have never seen Danos exposed to that product. But then we also learned, okay, maybe this isn't where we thought our audience was sitting. And that's not a bad thing either. So I also thought it was a great collaboration. Like, the video was amazing, and the person we worked with was great. So again, it was like, I just do this 10%. I always tell people, look, I know as much as I can do, but sometimes we put it out there, and then the world will tell us back what it thinks, and we just got to deal with that. And you are gambling a little bit with marketing, right? And that you got to kind of trust fall sometimes, and that's okay.
You 100% can't know everything. One of my big one of my big sayings, but one of my big, like, issues with people is, I tell them, I go, the data that you're looking at all happened in the past. What's going to happen in the future, you can't know by looking at the data. It's all a little bit of a gamble.
So,
but the thing is that you're making.
I'm going to steal that.
Yeah, you should definitely feel free. You're making an informed guess, but it's still a guess, because what would have to be true for all of those things to happen again, you'd have to live in a different world, and that's not the world we live in.
Correct.
And and I'm glad you highlighted the brand awareness, because obviously partnering with Liquid Death, at least there's like, those 25 to 29 times, now you're in somebody's head a little bit more, which again can't be discounted, because I think that's part of the issue. A lot of times we encounter is that people discount those things because they don't lead immediately to the sale. And that's, and that's a bad way of looking at things, because you don't know. It's like stacking things up over and over again. Which kind of brings me back to two questions that I had, and I'm trying to be conscious of time now here as well, which is, in your context, because I think this will be helpful for people to understand, what does brand loyalty look like, right? Because, you're competing with other tequila products. You're also competing against people not drinking, or drinking less, or wanting to drink more quality. A lot of times I think people think that they have to capture the entire market to be successful.
Yes.
So what does that look like from your point of view?
There's a couple touch points. I would say for me, and this is a personal one, I think that no matter what, that word of mouth, that hearing a suggestion from a friend, or hearing, your mom saw it somewhere, or she tried it and loved it. Like, I put people onto things all the time, and I just feel like that is something that and we can't measure that because we're not in these people's homes. I mean, maybe there's a tech agent listening to me right now, but I just think, but at the end of the day,
AI has got me.
Yeah, something's jotting down what they're going to sell me later. But I think that if that is so valuable, that it's very hard to measure that. Of course, it's very qualitative, but if I were to talk about things that I can see and that I can say almost like are quantitative, sometimes are like, brand sentiment. How many times are you getting mentioned when you're not there? When you're not posting or active, how many times are you getting, this is great for social, brought up in a post? Are people talking about your marketing campaigns? Are they recommending you in a comment section? Say somebody was looking for a new Band-Aid brand or whatever, like who do people mention? Because a lot of people go on social to ask for advice. They do want to talk. It is a place of communication. And I think that's another piece of advice I will say. If you're a brand, you have to remember that your community manager and the person that manages that two-way conversation is so, so important to your brand. They manage the DMs, they manage comments, but your brand has to be out there acting as a person and a point of listening, so that that I think Kava, I don't know if you're familiar with that.
There's one down the block.
Their social team are brilliant, and they do a really good job. They actually relaunched a menu item. So this is a great campaign that they did on social. They relaunched it, and they had the CEO hop on a Zoom call and call these top commenters who kept requesting this product to come back, and to announce that the product was coming back. And that was the announcement that it was there. But it was like, it took the social teams, hey, we're seeing this all the time and no one's giving up. Like, we're going to do something about this. So that didn't come from someone data being like, people are eating more potatoes, which is where a lot of these decisions get made, is somebody seeing, the price of potatoes are lower and people are eating more. And then that goes back on the menu. But that wasn't how that happened. So I think that you can have like that listening, and that's as close as you'll get to people doing those conversations at home or in their personal space. It's very valuable.
Well, it's also because I talk to people. I say, like, when you're building your research, you want to build from small to large. And it's like, so this social listening thing and being engaged, that can be like your first step, because you're going to get people that'll tell you things, and you can go, well, if I start seeing 6 or 7 of these things, or there's a trend, right? Like, oh, it keeps coming 5 or 10 a day. Then you are able to ask a question like, oh, well, is this something real, or is it just a couple randoms that are, not even coordinated on the internet? And then you're able to go and say, hey, look, let me do a focus group. Maybe you get 5 or 6 people together, and let me ask you these 5 or 6 questions. And then you're able to do some real quantitative stuff, and which what I liked, because you're talking about both the importance of qualitative and quantitative, right? And you can't discount the two things.
100%. You have to find a balance. And I think every brand is a little different, but I do think I worked with Tiger Balm a couple years ago through an agency, and it was a very random product. I had a great time. Yes. Oh, there it is. Having lived in Asia for a couple years, I'm Tiger Balm loyal, and being a bartender, that stuff, it's holy in this house. But what I will say was really interesting about them, when I started listening to the brand, I got in, started managing the socials, was just kind of taking over what they were doing to just get a sense. And of course, when someone hires you as a digital marketer, they want to see those dollars that they're spending on you right away, turn into something. And you're like, what? I need to see what's going on. We need a pulse. Otherwise, we can't tell you where we can take this or what people are saying. And one of the things that we saw where people were so and this is for the US market, a lot of people didn't understand the history of Tiger Balm, but the people that did cared so much about the legacy that was Tiger Balm. And so we did one post about the unique shape of the bottle, and it went, I think it was on Facebook, and it got like 500,000 organic views in like 24 hours. It was something crazy that I went, this is exactly what people want more of. And so we were able to then get permission to go through archives, to then go and look at all of this cool stuff that had been done that never been shared on social, and to use that and leverage that. And it really did a number for their social. But this all came down to, I was like, why wasn't the social team that you had before like looking at this and listening? And it really takes stepping out of just, what does the data say and what do you want out of this, but also what do your buyers want? What are they looking for, and what makes them feel seen by you? Right. Super important.
And I think the other thing too, and I'm sure you obviously know it because you were talking about it, but I think that people maybe miss is they neglect the heritage of the brand that they're working with, because, and I know it's important because most of the people here have really great brands with really great histories and really great ideas and brand codes that they can use, and but they often neglect them, and so when you're helping people understand this a little bit more, right, and approach these things like going, data's great, but you also like, where are you going? It's as much as where you're going, it's also where have you been? How do you help people understand, like, use this? Because like the Tiger Balm, the shape of the container is so great. The smell is a brand code. The color, especially this one's the white one, but I have the red one upstairs, that kind of burnt rust orange one. Those are all like incredible things. And if you change them, it wouldn't be the same.
Yes. Danos is actually a great example of that. So the hacienda, when Dano came up with the idea, his best friend turned business partner at the time, Chris Timmerman, and him went down to Mexico. It was kind of on a whim. They were like, maybe somebody will help us make this. And they went to it, very dangerously. And they ended up meeting Sylvia, who purchased back from her family this hacienda that had been together or around for 180 years. And really, when they went into this, Dano and Chris were very adamant about, we only want to use fresh pineapples and jalapenos. We only want to use fresh ingredients. And it was very, very difficult to do, especially because not a lot of people had been doing it that way. This family had been doing fresh fruit liqueurs. So it actually worked really well. They understood preservation of fruit and all of those fun things. So tradition was there, legacy was there, but it hadn't been reimagined in this way. So what's interesting is, like, when we talk about legacy, like, we talk about the hacienda as a partner and a collaborator. Like, this product, Danos, is nothing without the hacienda. We're not just buying the liquid from them. It's not just some contract deal. The coffee reposado, which we came out with next, which is infused with 100% coffee. There's no additives. It's really unique. That was a collaborative effort because we all saw this frontier of tequila making, and we said, look, everybody here is doing tequila very well. It's so cool, and we are doing that, but what's the future? What do people want? And it is a gamble to think about what that looks like. But so it's like, how do you keep one foot in the past and one foot in the future? And that is the what you're asking me. And I think it really comes down to making sure that you have people who understand storytelling. I think storytelling is such an underrated skill when it comes to brand building and marketing. So telling stories, but also bringing people along, being willing to be vulnerable. as a brand of, oh, maybe we didn't get that right, or maybe the 2.0 is going to be better, and asking people for feedback and asking for advice, but also saying, okay, well, we this might produce tequila that tastes like that, and that's delicious, but we do it in our hornos and our clay ovens this
Mhm.
way. And that's one part that we're not going to change. But maybe the juice, how we press the agave, we need more. And maybe a Tahona wheel, which is a traditional method somewhere else, maybe it isn't for us. So there were parts of the production process they ended up improving to be able to scale at that hacienda, but it didn't take away from the knowledge of what they were doing. So I think it's like, how do you tell that story, and how do you say why making sure you have a why for every decision you
Mhm.
made that maybe was an improvement for the future? I think that's super important too. Oh, I could talk about this for all day. Sorry, but I feel like they're a great example of that, in terms of what do you do to keep tradition alive, but also think about where is this going, and how do we not get lost by just being a brand that's has been doing this the
Mhm.
same way for almost 200 years, right?
Well, it keeps the brand as a living brand and not a stale and tired brand. It doesn't have to be a radical remake. It has, you can make these small decisions over time, which highlights the ultimate point, which is that marketing is not one thing, it's everything. And every decision is a marketing decision at a certain level. And like with the better you become at recognizing that, the more effective your marketing plans are going to be. So let me ask you this then. So let's plug some stuff, because I want to
Okay.
point people to the tequila. I want to point people to the different kind of expressions that using my words, and highlight some of this stuff, because I think it's great. So let's plug some stuff. Let's
Okay,
plug you.
perfect. I'm excited. So we have a Blanco, a Reposado, and Añejo. What makes the core line quite unique is we for the Reposado and the Añejo, we age past industry standards. So a lot of Reposados and Añejos are only aged for a few months at a time, or whatever the minimum is, for that threshold. But we use Virgin American oak, so nothing in the barrels have been held previously or aged previously, and so that tequila goes in there fresh. And so it takes a little bit longer, but it's one of the reasons that the color of our Reposado and Añejo are a bit lighter. So
Mhm.
much, so smooth and delicious, and it's got a different kind of bite to it because of that fresh wood. And our Reposado is probably the crowd. It's like everyone drinks it. They drink it by itself. When we all go out as a team, that's one of our favorites to enjoy together, because it's just insanely smooth that it's dangerous. We we talk about it all the time. But the babies that we have that we love, our flavors are, and we call them infusions. Flavors, I use the word interchangeably because the category is still, people don't think about infusion, but
Yeah.
if we were to say we're infusions, they're not flavors. So we do the Blanco with fresh pineapple and de-seeded jalapenos, which
Mhm.
is great because you get this nice vegetal spice from the jalapeno without it being overwhelming. You can have multiple pineapple jalapeno margaritas and you're not getting that like spice bomb to the face, which we don't enjoy. Um, and we do that. And then we also have this coffee reposado. So we take the reposado base and we infuse coffee beans inside. We let that sit for a little bit and then we strain everything out. And it's so both of the products, if you ever see them, if you shake the bottles, there's sediment at the bottom. So you have to shake them before you pour, because that's how much like almost fresh pulp is still sitting around
Mhm.
on both sides. And we made the flavors originally thinking about these primary cocktails. We actually have a new flavor coming out that I don't know if I can talk about just yet, but we
That's like
have
a
a
tease to be able to come
oh,
back
I
and
think
do it
I think I'll
again.
say something. No, I think I'll say something. So we've got this pineapple jalapeno that's meant to like really own the spicy margarita at that moment. But again, it's so delicious. It's 35% ABV, but you pour that over ice for friends anywhere you are, and you can drink it by itself. It's essentially a margarita, but a bit on the stronger side. Then the coffee reposado, again, delicious by itself, but that was to sort of own two moments, the espresso martini and then the carajillo. I don't know if you're familiar with that drink, but it's a very popular drink in Mexico. And it's literally meant like for the brave. And so it was like a drink for courage. And so that has liquor 43, coffee, and tequila. And so we basically took out a little step in the process, and coffee, tequila, liquor 43, and you can add a little fresh espresso if you'd like, but man, divine drink. I highly, highly recommend. And then the next one we have coming out is essentially our version of a margarita without all the stuff. It's a lime and orange infusion in our Blanco. And so you can basically drink it neat and it tastes like a margarita, but we really are looking at like the ranch water space, pouring that over with some club soda, being able to feel like you're drinking a margarita, but without all of the additives and all of the other stuff. So yeah, that's the core, and that's what we're doing. And we hope to develop probably some one-offs in the future, some really cool collectible flavors or, extra añejos and things like that, but that's to come.
Oh, awesome. And then where can people find you on the internet?
You can find, Dano's Tequila is on Instagram, just all together. And then you can find me on Instagram as well, Micaela Piccolo on Instagram, all together, all one word. But I talk a lot about marketing there. I talk a lot about the brands I'm working with and a lot of the fun stuff that I do. And yeah, that's, I was gonna say, is there anywhere else? Probably LinkedIn. If you want to really connect and work with me, LinkedIn is the other place.
Awesome. Well, Micaela, thank you so much for spending some time with me today. Thank you for doing the podcast.
Thank you so much. This is such a pleasure.
Let me know what you thought about my conversation with Micaela by sending me an email to my name, dave@davewakeman.com. Make sure you visit my website. It is davewakeman.com, where you'll find the blog. You can sign up for some newsletters. You can go to the store where I'll post all my events and everything coming up. Check that out, davewakeman.com. And if you've made it 53 minutes into this podcast, you'll love the Talking Tickets newsletter, which you can get at talkingtickets.substack.com. And don't sleep on the Talking Tickets Slack channel, which the link is in the show notes. Much too long for me to say in this forum. Do me a favor. Rate, review, and share the podcast. Any of the sites the podcast is on, share it with your friends, your colleagues, your coworkers. All these things help me get great conversations with people like Micaela. It helps me reach more people, and a little positive reinforcement. I'm a sucker for it. So, please do that for me. As I like to say at the end of every episode, I cannot do this thing without you. So thank you so much for being here. I will talk to you soon, and take it easy.